Oh, there you go. I can hear everything now. All good. All good. Okay. Well, this week's podcast is a very unusual format because it's just me talking to two guests because I've been abandoned by the Richards. They've just left me to go about being the curious observer with my two guests, Matthew and Nick. I would introduce you, but I don't really know, other than Twitter usernames, I don't really know everything about you two. So I will need a little bit of help. I've just worked out how to pronounce Nick's Twitter handle, which is also his business name. Kilmaha, is that correct? Okay, so that is your company, and Matthew is Aspect Forestry.
That's right.
Yeah, and management.
Yeah, and rural management.
And management as well. So I have spoke to you a little bit on Twitter, actually quite a bit, to be fair, and I think I've annoyed you a fair few times about what's wrong with certain trees when you post things. Pretty sure I mentioned you in one of the podcasts, if that definitely made it to the edit, where I think you moaned about some really badly planted trees, and I had zero idea why they were badly planted. So I asked you, and you educated me on exactly what was wrong with it, which is really helpful, that you take your time to do that sort of stuff. So when I was asked to have you as guests, I thought it was a great idea because I know almost nothing about forestry. I know about as much about forestry as Richard Negus knows about cryptocurrency. So today I'm here to learn from you two.
Excellent stuff. Well, thank you for having us for a start.
Forestry is a broad term, and not that many people know exactly what forestry is. And I think one of the things we want to do today is work out not just what it is, but why it's what's changed in forestry and the public perception of forestry now compared to what it was and what it is now. So yeah, explain what does the day-to-day look like, and what's the kind of goal of your role in forestry?
From my point of view, and I'll hand over to sort of Nick to sort of explain what he gets up to, certainly on a day-to-day basis. But I am primarily a timber harvesting contractor, and I'm a mechanized contractor in terms of I carry out the felling with machinery, extraction by machine. And we're based over here in East Anglia, in Suffolk. So in the same sort of neighbourhood as Mr. Negus. And we're managing and harvesting timber across a variety of clients, but mainly estate-based work. We do a small amount for organisations like the local council, wildlife trusts, but it's primarily estate-based work, and I harvest and market that timber in to whatever products that those trees are producing and whatever the market sort of requires at the time.
So what do they usually go to? Sorry.
It really depends. So a lot of our work is based around broadleaf trees or hardwood, as we tend to call it. We're doing a lot of sort of woodland thinning, coppice work. At the moment, we're doing ash regeneration work and restructuring woodlands in the face of various diseases that we're faced with. Trying to get those woodlands more resilient. Yeah, and so the products that we're putting it into, because the woodlands that we work quite often have been quite undermanaged, and that's a historical thing, especially in this part of the world where probably post Second World War and a decline in rural labour has meant that those woodlands haven't had a great deal done in them, especially coppice woodlands, where the coppice stalls now have grown far too large, and we're now getting them back into a sort of regular coppice rotation. A lot of the material that I cut is wood fuel based. It's firewood. It's biomass for chipping, but we also do other things where we're felling oak timber that goes into a variety of higher end markets, and things like sweet chestnut does as well.
So is that like furniture making and like
certainly
construction things?
Yeah, certainly a lot of the oak that we fell will go into green oak construction, sort of house restoration work, period top property type situations, quality fencing work, and planks and boards. So yeah, we're involved in a whole variety of stuff. But Nick's work, his is concentrated around the sort of the other end of the time scale.
So yeah, go on, Nick. What's your side of it?
So mostly what I am is I'm an establishment contractor. So I plant trees and I look after them. That's the main of our job, and we do some other bits and pieces around that, sort of little bits of felling or estate work and maintenance and things. But yeah, so our business is seasonal. So the main work we get is in the winter when we're planting the trees, and we plant mostly broadleaves where I am in the country, and we plant a little bit of conifer. Other places in the north of England, in Scotland, there's a lot more conifer. And
so, what is a broadleaf?
It is not a conifer, if you know what I mean. So it's anything that isn't a conifer is generally a broadleaf. So you look in your hardwoods, oak and beech, and the hedge species that Richard Nagus plants. They're all. I mean, you couldn't use the word deciduous, but I hate that word, so I don't want to.
It's too big a word.
So that's what I do. And then, so we plant all winter, and then in the summer months, we maintain what we've planted the previous year and the previous year before that, and sometimes, depending on it, 3 or 4 years ago.
So are you planting for essentially like a crop? Are you planting like that, or what's the purpose for your planting?
So I'm quite lucky where I am because we do a bit of everything. So we can plant for a timber crop, which we do that, and that is generally 100% conifer. We don't do monocultures so much in this country anymore. We do them, but not as much as we used to. So a conifer plantation for me would be 3 or 4 different species. It would be Sitka and Douglas and Western red cedar, for example. And the other thing we plant then is sort of native broadleaves. So we will do sites that are specifically for nature rather than timber production. And a lot of the sites would be for both. So we would have, say, 80% of it timber production and then 20% of it as mitigation for that, essentially.
Right, okay. Because so if it's timber production, it's not so good for nature. Well, I suppose it is temporarily, but you offset it with a little bit of supplementary conservation planting, or have I got that disastrously wrong?
Not disastrously wrong, but I would argue that conifer is no less good for nature than a native broadleaf, simply for the fact that it, at the end of the day, produces a product, generally a timber product, which can go, if it's been properly maintained and kept, you will get building materials, if nothing else. And then that will negate steel and concrete production, which is highly intensive carbon industries. So, yeah, on the face of it, this is probably one of the things we will want to talk about how forestry is positive and how there's a lot of negativity around it, is this thing that conifer plantations are dead zones and they are not as good for nature as broadleaves, which on the face of it, kind of yes, but there is a different aspect to conifer. It's a different way of being good for nature, if you know what I mean, because it negates other things which are really not good for nature. So it's that kind of little bit of everything that forestry should be. Is it's not one thing, it's not the other. It's everything in moderation, essentially.
So let me just go back a second. So what are you using conifers for in terms of building materials? How is that used?
So when it takes about 50 to 60 years to get to a tree that will be the size you need for building material. So it is.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a long old time.
It is, which is quite sad why we stopped really planting conifer in the 80s, because we're starting to run out now. The saying is, the best time to plant a conifer was 30 years ago. The second best time is today. Yeah. So we need to keep it rolling, if you know what I mean. That's why we import so much timber into this country. Like 80%, I think, is only China that imports more timber than we do as a net percentage.
Wow.
Yeah, so if you look around your house, this is a classic example. If you look around your house and see what's made of wood, it's all conifer. So, all your second fix, your doors, your architrave, your skirting, the table you sat at, the roof trusses in your loft, the floorboards, it's all come from a conifer plantation somewhere in the world.
Really?
Yeah. So what we'd really like to do is have it come from here, which is why we plant conifers.
Yeah, I had no idea that conifers were used quite so widely as building materials.
They're used for everything, and the best thing with conifers is you can use them for just about everything. So, just to take you very quickly through the life of it, I plant a conifer tree. For about 5 years or so, I maintain it, because the first 5 years is crucial to get it away, make sure it's got good form and it's not, crowded out by weeds and whatnot. Around about 20, 25 years, depending on how it's grown, you'll do something called a first thinning, which is you put racks in. So every 7th row you take out, and either side of the row is something called a matrix. You would thin that very slightly, take the worst trees out so the best ones can grow on. 5-10 years after that, you'll do another thinning, and then after about 50 or 60 years, you'll clear fell it. And then the hope is then that when you clear fell it, you've got the really good quality log for your building materials. The thinnings then, so when you do the first thin, you can get all kinds of products there as well. So fencing products like stakes for stock fencing.
Yeah.
You can get biomass out of it for chipping, a lot like Matt does. The second thinning, you'll get a bit of that, a bit more chip, and you'll start to get log then, which you can use for your building material. So there is not one product you can't get out of a conifer tree. You can use the whole thing. We're chipping the brash now in places for biomass. So we're literally taking every part of the tree and using
everything can be used. It's like a nose to tail version of trees.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I mean by we was talking earlier on about forestry being a complete industry. It literally does everything you could need to do.
I've seen some places like lakes and things like that. They get dug, and within the first year, it just looks like someone just dropped a bomb from an aeroplane, and it's just a hole in the ground. And then sometimes it's not even that long, but say 5 years, and there's trees and there's reeds, and then you'll start seeing all these different insect life, and quickly it gets established as a good place for nature, good biodiversity. You start getting frogs in and all sorts. And this might be a field that was just devoid of life only 5 years prior. So using that as an example, once you've planted conifers, how long before it does start, you start seeing nature flock to it? Even in the early signs. I mean, I know certain plants don't grow for needs ancient woodland and root beds and all sorts, but at what point does it start becoming a net positive for nature?
As soon as you put it in the ground, I'd say. As soon as you've planted it.
What within?
Well, yeah, as soon as you plant it, as soon as it comes out of its dormancy in the winter, it starts growing. You know what I mean? And I've seen, how can I put it? So we have to maintain them during the summer, which essentially is making sure they got enough room to grow. So it's getting rid of the weeds around the trees, but they also, the weeds as well as the conifer then, if you take the site as a whole thing, attract pollinators from the get-go, you know what I mean? So if you get flowering plants in there, which we leave them in there, I think this is another misconception of conifers being dead zones, is that they're absolutely not. I mean, we never take anything, kill off anything more than we ever need to. So you've always got pollinators to begin with, and then as the tree grows, you get bird nesting and that.
Yeah,
conifers will never be as biodiverse as broadleaves, and I don't think you'll find any forester who will try and maintain it or claim it otherwise. It's this thing I said about conifers being good in a different way. Yeah.
Why isn't a conifer as good as a broadleaf? Is it just it provides poor nesting material? Is it the fact they're not as diverse as should you plant a mixed bag of broadleaves? What's the bad side? What's that negative thing compared to the broadleaf?
I don't think it is negative, really, Callum. I just think it's not quite. I'm going to let Matthew answer that one. I can't think of the words. I know what I mean.
I think there's an awful lot in there, and to be honest, you could write several PhD theses on that very subject. I think overall, and I think Nick has already touched upon this, there are a lot of misconceptions and bias out there about forestry, the forestry industry, and what we do, and it does come down to this sort of polarizing thought of conifers versus broadleaves, and again we sort of repeat ourselves, and there's no doubt about it. A collection of broadleaf species within a woodland is more biodiverse than a standard conifer, but there's a lot of advantages to planting conifers, and we've already touched upon those from their productivity point of view. But there are very specific species that favour conifers, and just like Nick was saying about the floral species that will come in onto a new planting site. I mean, specifically, bird species like nightjar will favour either newly restocked sites because they're a ground nesting bird and they like the openness of them, or a site that's just been clear felled. So that's certainly a specific species that'd be in the uplands. But what I tend to find from my own sort of personal point of view, and we tend to get this more over in this part of the world, in the east of the country, is you'll get a mixture of both broadleaves and conifers within the same woodland. And I always think in the winter time, and especially those people out there that have got shooting interests will know that woodland birds and game birds will favour a woodland block with some conifers in it, simply because it's got some cover in the winter time. It's got some roosting out of the awful sort of cold easterly wind that we get in this part of the world. And if you've just got a purely broadleaf woodland where all the leaves have dropped off and it's the middle of January, I always think it's nice to have some, whether it be something like Western red cedar or Douglas fir within those broadleafs, because it just like say provides that bit of cover and shelter.
Yeah, I've always found on shoot days and being in the strange position that I am, where I get to wander around lots of different people's woods, those ones that have conifers and things like pampas grass and stuff like that right in the middle of the wood, just to make sure that it's warm and a bit sheltered and not a freezing cold thing from sort of December through to March. They seem to have a lot more wildlife in them than, like you say, those broadleaf woodlands.
Isn't the pampas grass there to symbolise wife swapping? Isn't that
I don't know. Is that like the upside down pineapple?
Oh, I don't know. That's a new one on me.
Don't Google it. Don't Google it. Oh, you never know what you're going to get with this podcast. That's the best thing. You never
You've
know.
lost me.
You just don't know.
That's an Eastern Oxford thing if ever I heard it.
Yeah. I always thought that was an old tale. If you're into that sort of thing, you plant one in your front garden, and then that indicates to the neighbours where you're open-minded.
Do you know, I if there's one plant that I could just do without, if they said it's going to go extinct, I'd be so happy. It's pampas grass. Like, how many times have you just sort of gone to pick a leaf and it's cut through your finger, and you thought, what evil, horrible plant is this? I hate it. I absolutely hate it. That's just a personal rant. There's not really any reason for that. I was just.
I think we've digressed from forestry, haven't we?
Yeah, that's sometimes it zigs, sometimes this zags. So, I get the impression that you're trying not just to spread the positives, but you're doing your bit as well for not planting these. I think you said monocultures earlier. So that is plantations that are like the same thing, all in a line. Which I've seen a fair few of those. It's the same, an oak tree spaced a certain amount apart and nothing else, and that's it. That is a monoculture, if I'm not mistaken. Yes or no?
A monoculture is literally every tree is the same species of tree.
I mean, it still has benefits to nature, because birds will not be like, oh, well, I only like to live next door to a sweet chestnut and occasionally nest in an oak. So it's not like it's terrible, but it's nowhere near as good.
There are disadvantages to monoculture, obviously. Like the main one being, if you get a disease in it, it could wipe out a whole forest block pretty quickly. We got the ips in your part of the world. Everyone knows about ash dieback. There's two big examples, probably. So that's the sort of the big negative about it if you're going to have one. The thing is, certainly with the amount of Sitka that's planted, particularly in Scotland, and planted a little bit around here, is it's the tree that everybody wants. It's a really good timber tree. It's really useful. It's really strong. It's I was saying about the timber in your house. If your house is new enough, it's likely as Sitka. A lot of it. The other thing about Sitka is it'll grow anywhere. It's such a useful tree. It's a really, really good tree. It's much maligned. But it will grow anywhere. It'll grow places no other tree will grow. Therefore, you have to grow it. It'll grow in places.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is because it'll grow in upland as well as lowland, and there are trees that won't grow in upland places. We are sort of forced by, not in my back garden, sort of thinking to use a lot of upland ground to plant in, which the soils aren't quite so good. So it sort of narrows the field of what you can plant.
Yeah, you can't.
Exactly that. So Sitka being what Sitka does, it will grow anywhere. It will grow with good form anywhere, and that's what we tend to use. It's a pragmatic.
So you're kind of planting for convenience, planting for success It's like the carrot. It wasn't the carrot genetically put so it didn't break. They intentionally bred the carrot to be resilient and not breaking up, not for taste, but just so it didn't break. So when it hits the supermarket shelf, it's still a full carrot. So they, as far as I know, they bred it for not for the benefit of taste and stuff like that, for resilience. So you're saying that when you're planting, you have to plant for the success of a tree rather than necessarily the benefit to nature, especially if you've got your arm up your back and you're having to plant in uplands.
Yeah, so probably what I say there is every tree you plant has a benefit. It depends on what you're aiming for, if that makes sense. So you're planting Sitka for timber, you're planting other things for other things. So how can I put it? It depends, a lot of it depends geographically. So we wouldn't, where I live in the Forest of Dean, we don't really plant monocultures. I mean, I can't remember I don't think I ever have planted a monoculture. There's one site was totally one species. It's always mixed conifer with broadleaf in it, essentially. So, but that is because because in the Forest of Dean, we can grow anything because the soil is that good. The conditions are that good. You know, I live in the West. It rains all the time. We can pretty well grow anything we want to grow. So we do, with some constraints, obviously, but we do. Other people or other places don't have that benefit. So you go, you know, it's a pragmatic choice, isn't it? We need a timber industry. We need a timber supply. I mean, the alternative is we just import everything, and that's not really an alternative, in my opinion.
It sounds like both of you really care about way more than just taking a chainsaw and making a few quid out of a bit of wood. You want to put the biodiversity in and do some good stuff for nature. Is that just a reflection of how you are and how certain people within the industry are running their business, or is that a complete movement across the board that everyone in forestry is pushing towards? Or is this kind of, I'm not saying that you're the best in the world and you're holier than thou and all that jazz. I'm just saying, is this an industry-wide thing where people are pushing for better nature and better conservation planting, or are there still a lot of bad guys that just want to plant and see a buck at the end of it?
Well, we are the best in the world, so we'll take that. But no, I think the key thing is that, and I've said it for a long time, and similar to farming, forestry tends to be a lifestyle, a way of life. It's not a 9-to-5 job, and that doesn't matter whether you're harvesting timber or planting trees or you're somewhere in the middle. Speaking personally, I sort of tend to live and breathe it a bit, really. I'm passionate about the industry that I work in.
It's like your job becomes your personality.
Yeah,
it sort of becomes your thing.
Yeah, and people say, well, once you've got sawdust in your blood, that's it. You sort of can't get rid of it. And to be honest, if we didn't love what we do, you probably wouldn't do it, because it's not an easy living to earn, not by a long stretch. And that was partly the reason behind sort of wanted to come on the podcast and speak about things, is because we just want to speak more openly and get that information out there about what a positive industry forestry is. And it is very maligned, and it is talked down a lot, especially now social media is such a big thing. But it's not confined us to social media. It's the mainstream media as well. report on forestry issues pretty poorly, to be honest. Whether it be sort of,
What do you mean report on it poorly? What, as in reflect on it as a negative light, or what's the things they say? What do the naysayers say?
it's certainly reflected on negatively. A lot of the time, if you read sort of a mainstream, say, newspaper report, or you look at, say, the BBC website, and occasionally there'll be a forestry issue, it's normally around tree disease or something like that. Quite often those reports aren't factually correct, which is very annoying. They've normally not interviewed somebody who's got direct experience. They'll normally go to a more sort of conservation organization, and I'm not slating conservation organizations at all, but if you're doing a journalistic piece on a forestry problem, doesn't it make sense that you go to speak to a forester to get the information firsthand, and get it correct? And often that isn't the case. Going back to the sort of social media side of things, a while ago, Nick and I both sort of jointly decided that we were sort of fed up of all the negativity, and we wanted to sort of showcase the industry that we work in, and give more detail, and through sort of Twitter and Blue Sky and these sort of platforms, we try and sort of give the general public a bit of an insight into what we sort of do on a day-to-day basis.
You started a hashtag, didn't you?
Yeah. Positive forestry.
I can see that's got a fair few additions to positive forestry.
Yeah, I started doing it every day, and I realised I just haven't got time to do it every day. So I thought, well, once a week I'll post something that just showcases what it is, the thing, why forestry is a positive thing. And I try to vary up as much as I can. I mean, I think, well, what was the last one I done? I can't remember now. Oh, it was about felling an oak tree into a pond, and why that was a good thing. And
why was that a good thing?
Well, I'm going to be 100% honest here. I'm not entirely sure, but the bloke I did it for is entirely sure. It's basically it's a guy. He's got this estate, one of the biggest estates in Herefordshire, and he's set aside a field for a conservation thing for wetland habitat. So how he explained it to me was, I had to fell this tree very, very accurately into a pond, or what's going to be a pond, because he wants to see over time how that breaks down and how that attracts insects, invertebrates, and then how that then moves on to attracting the birds that he wants to attract, and the wildfowl and all that kind of. It was extremely interesting, but outside of my knowledge, if you want. It's one of the reasons I really wanted to do the job, actually, is because it was so interesting. It was so far outside of plan and maintain.
Let me tell you, trees in water is a very good thing. Fish take shelter under trees. If you see a big open lake, it's often not that much around. If you've got an open lake and it's got some reeds around the edge and it's got a bunch of trees falling in and some roots and stuff, you'll find way more nature, way more insect life. The birds you'll get coots and things nest up in trees that are fallen over. They'll nest high and they'll nest successfully because they'll nest slightly higher. More hens and things like that, because if you walk past, you'll hear them. Sounds like a rock being dropped from a helicopter, because you'll hear a coot jump off the nest or something. They love a tree. It's very good for birds and nature and insects and fish. So I
must say I took a bit of convincing. Yeah, I did take a bit of convincing to fell a healthy-ish oak tree into a hole, but it did convince me, and I'm quite looking forward to seeing it, because it's not far from where we live. So we sort of have permission to go and keep an eye on it. And I'm actually going to talk to the guy and get him to give me more information so I can give you more information, because it really is interesting. But as an example of what positive forestry is, like on the face of it, felling a healthy-ish oak tree is not a positive thing until you look into the reasons why we did that.
So So this is. Do you get any of the negativity from people on that, or is that all a learning experience for most people?
So far, all I've had is people asking questions about whatever it was I posted. So yeah, we haven't had any negativity on that so far. If I'm honest, I'm kind of waiting for it, and I'll deal with it when it comes, but in a positive way. Generally,
Yeah, I think explaining those things is the way.
well, that's the whole point of it. I mean, I think a lot of it is. I don't want to say ignorance, but I can't think of the proper word at the moment. It's people just don't know what we do, and there is people out there and organisations out there, and I'm going to be very careful about how I phrase this, who probably know a lot about forestry but have a ideological view of it. And
or a hidden agenda.
Yeah, sell a book, generally, I think.
Not about actually.
No, that was all right. That was quite a good book, actually.
All right. We've managed to plug Negus. In a podcast he's not even on today. He's deserted.
Amy said I had
to. So, forestry, does it quite often get misrepresented by the NGOs, government bodies, media, and all that jazz? Does it often get bad press or poorly communicated ideas?
You get way more of that than you'll find a positive story. I mean, go through BBC Archives or any Guardian newspaper or any of them, really, and for every one positive thing, there'll be 100 that are negative.
Really? Yeah. So, when a little while back, the government, the Labour Party was touting around, I think it was 2 billion trees to be planted, and that was a big thing. When that happened, how were people talking about that? Apart from every side was just saying 2 billion is a pipe dream and not possible, and calculating how many people would have to plant how many trees and stuff like that, and sort of ripping that apart. What was the media perception of forestry? Did they completely misunderstand it, or did they roughly get what the idea was? I mean, that was obviously carbon offsetting was the dream.
I'm not sure they really knew what they meant by tree planting. I just think they jumped on a bandwagon and went away with it, and all parties did.
Did it sound like a nice number?
Well, they just tried to get you doing it. One said one number, and then I said, yeah, but we'll do double that, and then we'll do double that as well, and it just became ridiculous. What's the only thing that really sort of annoyed me about that is that the industry didn't jump on it, and news. We were pretty.
You say, I could do 1 million on my own.
Not on my age. We should have news.
It didn't stop any contractors selling PPE or anything like that. You could just say, just set up a company, say you could do 1 million, get the contracts for it, close it, dust your hands off, and we'll go and we'll go and eat in your little country pub that you bought with the proceeds. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It didn't stop many of the Tory donors, did it? So
no, okay. I mean, we just didn't make capital out of it when it was, for probably the only time in my life it became mainstream news, and we didn't capitalise on that. I don't think.
Did it just show a huge misunderstanding for the public? And also, I think there's possibly a problem with years of romanticizing trees as this sort of this get out of jail free card for. We're just taught as kids that trees are what you need to breathe. So then all this romanticizing of trees then ends up pushing you to a point where there's people like you with a chainsaw that are taking the trees down. So automatically we think, well, I've been taught all my life that trees are really nice and really good, and they take the carbon from the atmosphere and give us oxygen, and birds nest in them, and you want to tear them down. So does that public perception make you like straight away enemy number one when they don't understand forestry and you're constantly misrepresented by media and everything else?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that, and in some ways, Callum, you're not wrong, because there is a definite relationship between the general public and trees, and we understand that the reasons behind it, that they're very emotive things. They're important in people's lives, and they serve an awful lot of functions, whether it be sort of from a conservation point of view, biodiversity, landscape enhancement. I mean, you could draw a list up as long as your arm. And again,
you look at the Sycamore Gap thing. I mean, how everyone fell about that.
Absolutely. And this is why we're saying that there are so many positive things behind growing trees, planting trees, and having a forestry industry that's thriving in this country. But I think the key thing is woodland forestry trees will provide all those benefits, but the one thing that we can't sort of, that we have to hold as the most important sort of keystone in the whole thing is it's a crop. And
you've got this balance between timber production and ecology that sort of
exactly
has to balance.
And when anybody sort of confronts me on a site, if we've say got a public footpath walking down the edge of the woodland I'm particularly working in, and they say, well, why are you felling them? What are you felling them for? Why can't you just leave them? And I try to explain to them that it's a crop, and would you question an arable farmer for combining a field of wheat? And they go, well, no, of course we wouldn't. And I said, well, what's the difference? The only difference here is the timeline. So I might be felling conifers at 60 years old. I might be felling oak at 160 years old. But it's a harvest. It's a crop. And either post felling, the area naturally regenerates with more trees if it's say coppice, or it's replanted, or it's managed on a continuous cover system whereby you keep going into that woodland and you essentially you take out a small harvest on every sort of few years on a rotation, but you've all the while got younger trees coming through to replace the ones that you've harvested. So yeah, but people do get quite passionate about when they hear chainsaws and machines, and I'm not saying that as a forestry industry, I don't want to paint ourselves as some sort of angels, because we're definitely not, and mistakes have been made in the past, and like all industries, it doesn't matter what sector you're in, there are people who are very good at it, and there are the odd ones that are rogues and do it for the wrong reasons. But that's no different from anywhere else in life.
Oh yeah, every industry's got the same rogues and bandits in.
Exactly. So
it's not like they're unique to any specific industry. Rogues and bandits will get everywhere.
Exactly. So, but overall, that's what we want to try and put across, is that forestry isn't just about timber production. It comes with all the other benefits and add-ons that you can list. But having a timber harvest is at the heart of it.
Can I, while we're sort of on this subject, what does bad practice of timber harvesting look like? What is the really terrible things that people are doing? Obviously, we've established that you are the best foresters in the entire world, possibly the universe. I'm not sure how many trees are outside of planet Earth, but if there is some, you are the best in the universe. But what does bad look like?
Well, I think Nick's probably best to answer this question because he's quite topical
How's that
in
meant to
terms
mean?
of. No. Don't take me the wrong way. No, don't take me the wrong way. But I think there has been a lot of media coverage in the last 12 months about tree planting not being done properly, and the results of that everybody's seen, and that sort of forms this negative sort of image of the industry. And I think Nick can sort of expand on that a whole lot better.
Yeah, I mean, you do see a lot of these, and I think they're kind of narrow, really, of photos of, especially on the side of motorway embankments. There's a thing in Kent when there was like 300,000 trees planted and they all died. And people saying how terrible this is.
Oh,
yeah, I might exaggerate the number. I can't remember what number it is now.
The Cambridge
Cambridge,
part
sorry.
of the A14.
Yeah, that was it.
Was a particularly bad example of it.
But it was rushed, and it was, it's the embankments on a dual carriageway. It's not the best soil, but they have to plant it, and they had to plant it in such a, a relatively small amount of time. So yeah, I mean, I find it hard blaming the contractor on that, because the contractor is going to be under severe pressure to get that done. We're meant to finish planting by March the 31st. And I never have. I regularly go past Easter into May, because we don't often start until January, maybe, when we should be starting in November, for loads of different reasons. The main one being that we can't get trees, and that's because of climate change, and the trees don't go dormant quick enough, so you can't take them out the ground to take them somewhere else to plant them. Which is
okay.
Kind of a vicious circle, isn't it? We're trying to mitigate climate change, but climate change has stopped us mitigating climate change.
Okay, what was my original question? Let's side quest into that quickly, because that sounds really interesting. Climate change, so you have to wait until trees go dormant. So it has to be cold enough for trees to go dormant, and then from there you can take them out of the ground and then plant.
Exactly that, yeah.
So did it used to happen in November?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've all seen it's milder now, isn't it? When we get not as many frosts.
Oh, the last few Novembers and stuff, it's been hardly any frost, but wet as anything.
So you would generally say, as a rule of thumb, you wait for the first frost and then you can start pulling the trees, but we don't get them anymore particularly. So the trees haven't reached dormancy when they used to do. We have mitigated that slightly by the use of cells rather than bare root trees, but they're more expensive and harder to grow. So we don't have as many as we should, or could, I should say.
So that's one of the problems affecting planting as quickly as you can. If you had you have to wait till later, and then you. So does that mean effectively, because spring comes pretty quick? Does that mean your planting window is incredibly tight?
Well, where it used to be 5 months, it's now 3. It can be, and
God,
if everything doesn't happen as it should happen, it could take even longer. Hence, planting into the spring.
That's like, what's that? 60% of the time that you used to have,
something like that. I mean, in fairness, I get a very few. On the whole, it's not any worse than what it would have been in a normal year beforehand. We still get, 10% is a generally accepted mortality rate, which we would just go and replant the following year. It hadn't particularly deviated too much from that. There are odd exceptions. Obviously, there always will be, that thing in Cambridge, for instance. But in general, not bad.
Let's steer back into previous question, which was what does bad look like? So this tree planting, I think we've discussed this a couple of times on the podcast, because I've seen some pretty horrendous things, and also the incentive is wrong. They incentivize you to plant a big line of trees, but they don't give you any incentive to keep them alive. So you can plant them. In fact, there's almost a disincentive to keep them alive. So bad actors can come along, take government grant money of X amount to plant a load of trees. And if they all happen to fail in 3 years, they could reapply for grant money to plant all those trees again. Is that correct or not?
Not so much insofar as you'd have to replant them anyway. So anything that dies, you have to, it's called beating up. So anything that did die, the next winter you'll have to replace them as part of it. The problem with the grants, as I see it, is other than the fact they take a long time to come, which is a bit of a problem, but that's, you've got that with SFI and all the grants, that's just, something you've got to deal with. The problem I see with them is you get quite good money for planting the trees, but there's not half as much money to do the subsequent maintenance down the road. A lot of the problems come with failed crops is because they weren't maintained properly, rather than the planting. Bad planting is easy to see. If tubes are wonky and stakes are broken and the roots are out of the ground and someone's put it in upside down, that's bad.
So bad looks like people taking grant money and not doing a very good job. And then what else does bad forestry look like?
Go on, Matt, because you sent me some photos the other day and had a steaming rant.
I would have been the bad forestry WhatsApp chat. Maybe we'll set up a Patreon's channel in our group.
Yeah. Amy might have to do a bit of editing here. Bad forestry practice. On the harvesting side of things, it could be a whole host of different things. It could be over thinning a wood, so taking too many trees out. It could be thinning a woodland by taking all the best trees out and just leaving the poorest stems to grow on. It could be going into a site with the wrong ground conditions and causing horrendous sort of compaction issues, soil damage, rutting.
Because there's real risks to taking those things, like taking things out of the ground. There's real risk to things like flood risks and things like that, isn't there?
I think that the main problem with ground damage is the machines that we tend to use now, because of the economics, are incredibly large. My harvester runs on tracks, so the ground damage and compaction is kept to a bare minimum, and we are quite sensitive about how we use it and monitor sort of weather and ground conditions. But if you force a large machine into a site, especially in the wintertime that's too wet, that ground rots. But that damage, once you've caused it, takes years and years and years for basically natural processes to rectify those issues. And compaction then has a real negative impact on the trees that you that are left in the woodland, because of the damage that you cause into the root structures. So you want to try and minimize that in any way, shape or form. You don't want to even start causing it in the first place. And then that comes down to correct management and doing the operation at the right time of year and having the right machine on site to do it that's the right size, that's suitable for the job that it needs to be doing.
So it sounds like it's very much a thing that experienced people that are long in the tooth need to be doing, and it's not not something that people should get into should they just want a quick buck and not care about the environment?
There's no quick books in forestry.
I've never met anyone in forestry that wasn't mad keen about nature and, you know, passion for fishing or shooting or just being in the great outdoors generally. Tends to have like-minded people around the industry.
Yeah, it does. And you going back, you're right. It is there's a huge level of experience required to do a lot of these jobs, because quite often harvesting sites, taking my work as a specific example, they're quite challenging. Some of them, they're quite technical. There'll be numerous hazards and obstacles and issues that you've got to work around, and you've got to really know what you're doing in terms of the trees that, say it's a thinning. You need to know what trees that you're selecting. You assess the trees. Sometimes I will pre-mark them with a spray can. Sometimes if it's a bit more uniform and straightforward, I'll sit on the harvester and select them as I come to them and work my way through the wood. But there's all manner of things that you have to take into account. I mean, my current site, I've got power lines, public access. You could have
complicated.
Exactly. I mean, I've got underground services as well. A holiday cottage on the edge of the compartment, which is served by a drive, which again is open for public access. So you've got to have experience. You've got to have your wits about you, and you've got to know what you're doing.
So how long have you been doing it? This is another question. How long have you both been at the...
This year is my 27th year.
Wow. Long time. And Nick, how about yourself?
I sort of started properly working in 2000, so 25 years. But so my dad was in it. So I was out with him when I was like 6, not working when I was 6, but I remember being out in the wood with him, sitting in his...
It's all right, we're all friends here. I'm pro-child labour.
I am too. My kids aren't. Weird. So I've been about it all my life. I started I remember when I was about 15, and it comes to the summer holidays, and our dad goes, "What are you doing for the summer holidays?" I don't know. He said, "I know what you're doing." And I went out and I learned how to stack timber.
It wasn't actually an open question.
No, it was a leading question, and he already knew what the answer was. But he did pay me well, so that's okay.
So go on. What was obviously not 6? I don't think you were stacking timber at 6. How old were you stacking timber?
I was about 15 when I started properly working then. And that was like weekends and holidays and stuff like that. But it wasn't, I'm not going to make it as intensive. I would go out for a few hours, and him and my uncle would be felling by hand with chainsaws, and I would go, cross-cutting, making their products, and I would go behind the two of them and, at a safe distance and stack it all up for them so they didn't have to. And then they would come out with a tractor. And then I did that till I went to college. I went to college for a bit, and then I was full-time for my dad for a few years before I went self-employed.
So between you, like 50 years of experience, do you still really enjoy the day-to-day? Do you like it? Is it really rewarding?
I like the job. I like planting trees. I'm possibly the only one in the world that does. I enjoy it. I think the other thing we don't just plant trees. When I don't really like the term tree planter, because we do so much more. Is probably the skill, like Matt was just talking about, the skills of harvesting driver. The skills for a planter is a more technical job than you think it would be. It's quite difficult because to make our money, I've got, if it's just straight trees, then I would without a shelter on it, I've got to plant probably 1,500 to have a decent day at it. And then after we plant, we've got to look after them. So then we got to get brush cutters out and chainsaws and spraying equipment. So we do lots of different things. So you got to be able to drop one thing and then instantly go and pick another thing up and be able to do that well as well. And then we do other stuff to keep ourselves busy, like whatever we come across. Really, that much I won't do for a quid. So
Brilliant.
I think
I'll do anything for a day rate. That's what I say.
Depends on the day rate, doesn't it?
I think from my point of view you do. I love the job, and Nick's hit on it. I love the job, and I often say, but I don't like everything that surrounds it. And you alluded to the fact that the job's quite physically demanding, and it is to a certain extent, but machinery has taken away a lot of that physical demands. I think it from my point of view, and I know Nick shares this, is the mental demands that are sort of placed upon us now, and the day-to-day stress of being self-employed and running a business, but on top of that, there's quite a lot of sort of, what, for want of a better term, forestry related stress that comes with it as well. And I don't think that's really ever been recognised in the industry. And it's not getting any better. But on a positive note, and Nick has been involved in this more than I have, I think it's now just starting to become recognised what a problem that may be about the people that do work in the industry, and the effects of stress. And only last week there was an agroforestry show in Hertfordshire, and there was a new campaign launched that was sort of spearheaded by the Royal Forestry Society and the Forestry Contracting Association and Confor and one or two other organisations, to try and raise the awareness of the mental health issues and hopefully bring it to the forefront so everybody's sort of can take it on board, and then hopefully more positively able to put some actions in place to make the situation better for those of us that are working in the industry.
So what's the support network that they've put in place? Is it like a group, or what is it?
So we haven't long begun. It's probably 6 months ago we started, we came together. So just for clarity, in my other life, I am a director of the Forestry Contracting Association as well. So I'm doing the mental health stuff in my capacity as that. You're all free to join. It's very cheap. We do lots of stuff. And
you get as bad as Negus.
Have you got a URL? We'll put it in the show notes. You'll be just fine.
Anyway, I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah, so it basically became obvious that there's a problem in mental health in forestry, particularly with contractors. I think we tend to be sat at the bottom, propping everybody else up, if you know what I mean. So when shit rolls downhill, it's rolling pretty fast by the time it gets to us, and that's the problem with it. So we came together to see what can we do about it to raise the awareness. So we're launching a series of things. I've been heavily involved with it. A friend of mine, Ewan Lloyd Williams, he's also heavily involved with it, as well as Royal Forestry Society, Confor, and whoever else. So we launched it, or I wasn't there, but we launched it actually at the Royal Welsh Show with a questionnaire, which went on the Royal Forestry Society website, and it was basically, it asked you two questions, sort of how do you feel and what do you think? And we got the feedback from that, and I haven't actually got it yet because we've had so many responses. It's taken a long time to get through it. So that was the first thing we did. So I get an idea of where we are, of where things are. And then last week at the agroforestry show, we sort of maybe an official launch, you would call it. I wasn't there. I couldn't make it. And there was an animated video went out, and the thing of the video, it was basically, check your tone. Think about how you speak to people, how you engage with people. And this is sort of coming back to why we and Matt, wanted to talk to you on this podcast is forestry is a very positive thing. It can be a very positive thing. And the negativity around it is not doing anyone any good. It does. It impacts us in an oblique kind of way. So it doesn't directly impact, but it if you're constantly having negative stuff thrown at you all the time, the strongest guy in the world eventually is going to, beat you down eventually. So, and this is sort of part of where it comes from. And part of this mental health thing is I wanted to come here and be extremely positive about it all and show what positivity can look like. So I'm fed up of the negative bit of it.
Would you say that mental health is something that has previously been neglected in forestry? Because I know,
absolutely, yes.
I mean, you only got to look at Ricky Hatton taking his own life only a week ago, and the amount of the mental health crisis, the fact that suicide kills more people now than ever before, and how bad it is. I assume that forestry is a largely male dominated industry, which I don't think I'd be incorrect in assuming.
No, I think all rural industries are, aren't they?
It is a really important, I think it's a really important thing for us as you as an industry to have a support network there for people that are struggling, especially with, like you say, with the negativity. Yeah. So, yeah, anything you can do to support that is going to be a really good thing.
Well, I think we have to just acknowledge it's a problem, isn't it? And I think that has been acknowledged a little bit now, but it's about keeping the momentum up now and keeping it focused, but mostly trying to get people to...
Are you trying to provide a support network for people that are...
That's the really hard thing. There are agricultural charities, RABI, DPJ Foundation, I think, in Wales. But they're not for... I'm not saying they're not for forestry, but they're not... And I'm not saying there should be something for forestry, but we are working with those guys to try and include forestry then, if you like.
Yeah. Not necessarily at any point in making your own separate thing, I think, when the infrastructure's already there.
Exactly, man. I mean, what's the point in...
But to broaden it out to that.
Yeah, if it's already there, let's use it. And they've been so willing to help out as well. And the other good thing about it is because they've already been there and already done it, we don't have to spend years making mistakes that we don't need to make because they sort of show us the way. One of the other things we're doing is a pie and pint night. So it's a trial thing. We've done one in Wales already, and we're doing another in Wales on Friday at Brecon. And basically, it's a way for people to come together, and it's just a relaxed atmosphere, and say what you need to say or say what you want to say. And I'm hoping that, well, I've had a lot of requests already that this be a nationwide thing, and that's what the plan is.
I think it's that is so important. One of the things with this podcast is we've created quite a nice little community, and I'm just loving the idea that one day we'll all meet up and we can all talk to each other and we all know stuff. It's all well and good scrolling through your phone and seeing people that you're consuming the content of people that exist on the internet, but actually talking to people, even if it is just a WhatsApp group chat, or it's it's the same people you're talking to on Twitter, or you're engaging with those. It's so good for you. it's so much better to have a half decent conversation and know the nuance of someone's life and stuff compared to we increasingly living a very isolated life. And I should imagine forestries, do you get to work together a lot, or are you often solo out there in big machines? I should imagine you got your ear defenders on and whatnot, so you're probably not chatting and working as teams. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, does it get lonely?
From my point of view, I mean, yesterday, just as a pure example, because it's easy to remember, I got to site just gone 7 o'clock, left site at 6:30, and I saw one person the whole day who was a dog walker.
Wow.
And okay, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Callum. Is we have phones, and yeah, I speak to different people on the phone during the day and all the rest of it. But just like agriculture and farming, the sort of labour force in forestry has changed. And when I first set the business up, I had at various times. I think the most I had at one point, I had 5 chainsaw operators working for me. And you'd get together at break times and all the rest of it and put the world to rights and you bounce stuff off each other and all the rest of it. And it gives you that bit of a mental break. But when with the advent of mechanization and everybody sort of exactly like you say, sat in machines, lovely comfy cabs, earbuds in, listening to your podcasts, whatever you're doing, but you don't have that communication on a face-to-face basis any longer. And I think that certainly plays its part. I think as well, there is a lot of pressures on us on a day-to-day basis, whether that be weather-related. The contractors out there that are running a lot of machines, a lot of that machinery is on finance, and generally rates in forestry for working are done on a piece rate basis. So you're paid for output all the time. So you've constantly got that pressure to keep working, do long hours. And I think that all contributes into this sort of situation that we're discussing. And I think there's also the fact that it is a very macho, male-dominated generally. But I think another thing is it's quite a traditional industry, quite sort of conservative with small c. It's probably not the done thing for men to talk about what's going on and how they feel, and you put a brave face on it and go, well, it's all right. You just become more grumpy or whatever, and this, that, and the other. But just like Nick says, and the one thing I found is as well, it's important, and I think this is where Nick was saying about the sort of pint evenings and things. It's important to talk to people that understand what you're on about and are experiencing similar things. And forestry is such a small, sort of isolated niche industry compared to a lot of other jobs. It's quite difficult to find other people with that similar background experience on a day-to-day basis, because we're so sort of spread so thinly.
Yeah, you start a conversation and you got to explain the entirety of forestry to them before they even have
exactly.
Remote. Yeah. What you can do now is say, look, listen to this podcast. This is this episode, and then we can have a chat afterwards. Is that all right? And then we'll all be just fine. Okay, right. I have one final question for you. If you could just sort of rattle the everyday Joe in the street and tell them something that's the most misunderstood thing about forestry, what would that be?
Really love to get away from the conifer bad thing. And it's taught from such a young age that commercial forestry is a problem. And it's not. In fact, it's completely opposite. It's a solution to a lot of what we got to deal with. So yeah, if I could persuade everybody to realize that conifers aren't the horrible, nasty, wildlife killing things that everyone seems to think they are, I think that's what I would. I think that would go a long way. If you could, if we could get people around to the way of thinking that conifers are a good thing and why they're a good thing, and stop people saying they're not.
So conifers good on a t-shirt.
Yeah, I'll get one of them. I'll send it.
The merch store is slowly coming together, one day at a time.
I think from my point of
on.
view, sorry, I just quickly from my point of view, I don't think I'd say one thing. I'd just invite them to come out to the site that I was currently working on at the time and get them to see for themselves with their own eyes what actually goes on.
Just quickly, what would that look like? What would I come out, I've got 2 hours. What would a day look like to show me what the positive aspects of forestry
2 hour
is?
days, not a tree surgeon.
Oh, dear.
I've got 2 hours. You've got to show me the ropes in 2 hours. I've got a very important lunch date.
All the tree surgeons that listen to this podcast.
They'll probably crying to their bags of money now.
Right. Serious. I think if you were going to bring them out to a site, you'd show them how the job's being done, the sensitivity in the way it was being done, the quality of the trees that are being left, the diversity of the trees across the site, and all the associated biodiversity that goes along with those trees. But I'd also show them the products that were being produced and how it was being produced, and what sort of give them an idea of how that raw timber product is going to end up in their day-to-day lives as items that they're going to use within their own homes, and so basically give them a window into the whole cycle of what actually goes on in the industry.
And like you said, you've got that detail of anything made of wood is largely taking the place of something that could have been steel or concrete or any other material that is probably net worse for the environment. So while it might be seen as bad to take a tree out, it's not as bad as the alternative. So
I mean,
overall, it's a net positive.
Yeah, I mean, what you got to remember is whether anybody likes it or not, we're experiencing climate change, and we need to decarbonize our lives. And one of the way of decarbonizing it within the construction industry is try and get away from carbon intensive materials like steel, like concrete, and replace those where we can with timber, because by using timber, that timber has come from a tree that has grown, and during its life cycle it's absorbed the carbon, and that carbon is locked up within the timber. So if you then utilize that within a building, that carbon is stored within that building for the lifetime of that building. It's not out in the atmosphere. Whereas steel and concrete have put, I haven't got figures, but have put an enormous amount of carbon into the atmosphere in their production process. So,
and not to forget that the wood is incredibly recyclable.
Well, I was just going to
well.
say, you can't plant steel twice, can you? I think some people don't really realise is like timber technology has come on leaps and bounds in the last certainly 15 years. I mean, the things we can do with timber now, we couldn't do them years ago. The technology is really, I mean, there are houses in Scandinavia built entirely from wood. And we're talking high rises now. We're talking sort of 10, 15 floors. Can't for the life of me remember where it is at the minute, but it's good, isn't it? Though it's like that. It's there'll be an element of steel in it, maybe as a structure, as a foundation.
Yes.
But they're made entirely of wood. There's some in Canada as well. But if you look, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, all these places, they're already starting to develop these things. And there's no reason why we can't do it in this country. We just need more timber.
I'll be the first to buy an IKEA flat pack house. Oh, it'd be great. I'll just find a bit of land and I'll just, me and an Allen key, give me like 3 hours, I'll get it knocked out. It'd be great.
Dear.
What would it be called?
Callum's Folly, that's what it'd be called.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've learned a lot. I think conifers are renting a conifer to nature for 60 years to then, build a desk out of it. I can't really see how that could be a bad thing. So you've won me over. I'm team forestry, maybe. And I just thank you for the best forestry people in the universe for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
No, thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated.